We have the pleasure of welcoming Matt Charney today to our interview series Leaders Hum. I'm Aishwarya Jain from the peopleHum team. Before we begin, just a quick intro of peopleHum. peopleHum is an end-to-end, one-view integrated human capital management automation platform, the winner of the 2019 Global Cody Award for HCM that is specifically built for crafted employee experiences and the future of work with AI and automation technologies. We run the peopleHum blog and video channel, which receives upwards of 200,000 visitors a year and publish around 2 interviews with well-known names globally every month. And now for our guest, Matt Charney is the Chief Content Officer at Allegis Global Solutions. One of the topmost experts in the world when it comes to talent and technology. He is famous for his intelligent content. He is a partner at Recruiting Daily, the world's largest destination for HR content. Matt's personal blog, Snark Attack, is classified as an essential read by WordPress, recognized as one of the most influential HR professionals in the world. We're really looking forward to having notes of wisdom from this conversation. Welcome, Matt. We're thrilled to have you.
And I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you so much for making the time today. So let me start with the first question that I had for you, Matt. So I came across this video where you were saying that no kids would ever dream of being a recruiter. Can you tell us a little about your journey that has landed you here as one of the topmost HR influencers?
Yeah, I think it is a good reminder that, as much career advice might be out there, nothing ever goes according to plan. And we all ended up here because that plan went wrong. So I, was a screenwriting major and became a recruiter like so many other liberal and fine arts college graduates. And I will not bore you with the details other than to say somehow for quite a while now, I've convinced companies like, as a recruiter, Disney and Warner Brothers, to let me hire people for them, which was awesome. And, for the last more years than I care to admit, companies like Monster, Cornerstone On Demand, Recruiting Daily, and Allegis have been nice enough to let me pretend that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to talent technology. But, I think the last few weeks have really showed I don't know anything, but in a reassuring way, no one does. So that's me in a nutshell. Still trying to figure it all out.
Right, I think we're all in the same boat, just trying to figure out what we're doing here. But tell me something, Matt. What is it that excites you the most about what you're doing? What is it that makes you, wake up in the morning and just jump out of your bed? What is it that excites you the most?
Honestly, up until very recently, I would not have had a good answer for you. But the, let's say, silver lining of all this is that it's a good reminder that jobs are really important. They're a huge part of our identity, how we see the world and how we see ourselves. And recruiting is so essential to intermediating not only people to have employment, but also hopefully better employment, better lives and better livelihoods. And then you really see how imperative what the work is that we're doing at a fundamental level, as opposed to, the impact of AI on whatever, So in a way, I think going back to the basics is what gets me excited, and that is how do we get people jobs?
That's an interesting perspective, how you're kind of getting back to the basics, and especially during these times, these turmoil times, how would you advise organizations that still have to continue hiring in these times of pandemic? What would you tell them? What's right from wrong?
I mean, I can't tell you any more than I could have answered that question in the best job market in history. I think intrinsically organizations know what's right from wrong. They put a bunch of tools like assessments and manual intervention through pre-screens, resumes in there, but ultimately it really just comes down to both interpersonal chemistry. I think, and to a large extent, that is something that can't be defined. So organizations know what's right for them. If you're one that's hiring right now, don't change anything because you've done something right. And all I have to say is I would hope that you continue to treat candidates and the candidate experience as critically as you did back when the supply and demand ratio looked quite different.
Wow, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If you're still hiring right now in these times, there must be something that's done right, and that's a track process.
Don't change.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let me know what the secret is.
Yeah, what's the recipe for that, huh? That makes a lot of sense. And you're talking about tech, you're talking about AI. Do you really believe that AI is an enabler in this entire hiring process, or people are just looking at it as, oh yeah, I'll just do that tomorrow. I really have to do something else. Prioritize that later on for later on. Do you see that?
Again, the nice thing is this is one trend I don't have to adjust my answer around. AI has never existed in the recruiting space. Even the most advanced, artificial intelligence researchers in the world say that general AI, which is what we're discussing, is 5 to 7 years off. What we're talking about is automation. Automation's a good thing. It's not. Well, it's interesting, by the way. Remember when robots were the biggest threat to everyone's job? Like that was like a month ago. We were like concerned, oh, the robots may come and take all our jobs and change the workforce dynamic. And it turned out to not be that dramatic. So that's the limitation of artificial intelligence. Intrinsically, algorithms need historical information in order to predict future results. We've spent quite a lot of money on that and fed, I don't know how many terabytes of work and recruiting related data to these algorithms. And I gotta say, nobody saw this coming. So as intelligent as artificial intelligence may or may not be, you can't rely exclusively on technology because ultimately you're a human trying to keep other humans working.
Mm-hmm. Right. So it's about the human experience, which is the ultimate level, and that really either makes or breaks the day. But AI can be, like, as you said, it's automation, not even AI right now. We're like 5 to 7 years off, and I think AI and machine learning. I'm sorry, you're saying something?
Yeah, I was gonna say AI is not going to take anyone's job, but it's also not going to save anyone's job in recruiting either.
Oh, right. Absolutely. So what you're trying to say is that you can work with some amount of automation, but really you have to have human intervention and you have to have a connect with the candidate to really make that process efficient, right?
Yeah, and I think that efficiency is going to find itself. So for a while, we thought that disruption needed to happen so that we could essentially have innovation. I think what we're actually finding is that when a real disruption occurs, innovation just kind of has to happen. So the interviewing, the video interviewing, what they would say asynchronous. Employment interviewing market right now is sitting at somewhere like $100 million every year. The technology that we're doing this video interview on is something that you were able to download. Everyone's using it. As we're seeing, you can get your whole workforce like up on it in 48 hours, and nobody's like, I don't understand how to use my webcam and Zoom, right? So I think what you're going to just essentially start seeing is that the way that we live our lives and the way that we live our work lives are going to rely on the same platforms and essentially, have a whole lot of overlap.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And also, since we're watching everything, we're kind of seeing everything in retrospective and we're doing a lot of reflection on what we're actually doing in these times. Do you think that platforms will have to, kind of change their narrative on how we hire with technology? Would they have to enhance some kind of features, or will they just have to say that, hey, let's leave it to humans,
Well, so it's interesting if you look at let's say March 2019, which I'll call peak VC recruiting hysteria, and you look 10 years prior to that, so March 2009, which is a nice 10-year coincidence, was like the bottom of the employment market last recession. We've spent so much money and time talking about new tools, new technologies, new paradigms, and which system is going to change everything. Well, as it turns out, in that time, job boards have remained the number one source of spend where it comes to getting candidates. It is still the source recruiters put the most faith in as external job postings. Internal mobility and referrals, still the number one source of hire, so that hasn't changed. And if you look at sources of hire other than less career fairs, more social media, it's the same in its peak as it is in the valley. So the fundamentals really haven't changed on the one hand. On the other hand, when you look at systems, the market share looks the exact same as it did in 2019 as in 2009. Oracle, dominant market player. They essentially have like about 80% of the market between all their applications, and most of the rest is split between SAP and at the time PeopleSoft, but now all that's happened is PeopleSoft's been replaced market share-wise by Workday, both of them founded by the exact same person and running on the exact same code base with the exact same executive team. So my point is this: what you're doing now is the future of recruitment. The industry doesn't move. And so if you have the fundamental skills, which is the ability to engage, persuade, and negotiate with people, then you're going to be okay. Even in the best market, if you were relying on post and pray and, in-mail, you were never going to make it through any market.
Well, that's quite insightful. I mean, I think nobody kind of thinks about how a hiring has changed, whether it has even changed at all. It's still the same. The fundamentals are still the same. And wow, that is surprising. And it's very strange how we've been through so many, refresh cycles, but hiring is still stuck at the same level. And how do you, when you think about all this, right? How do you kind of, look at hiring in perspective and say that, okay, this is one element that needs to be changed right now? What is it that we need to change right now?
So I think that we're really bad. So if we say humans are a resource, follow my metaphor here, it's going to be extended and I apologize. But if we say that humans are a resource, we're really bad at inventory, right? So what we've been terrible at, and why this happens every so often, we open, a million jobs a year, and then inevitably within 3 months, they all disappear. Well, why does that keep happening? Because we hire without knowing exactly what the balance is going to be to have maximum impact with the right headcount. Because you have to think, if talent acquisition was incorporating the right people, the right fit from a culture perspective, the right analytics, doing everything right, then, hiring needs would essentially never fluctuate. So what we need to do right now is, in my opinion, to get away from being so tightly focused on what's not a great practice in inventory management and supply, making sure that supply and demand match. And that is get away with just in time. Stop posting jobs and finding the most qualified person, and really focus on finding the person who's got the highest degree of learning agility and the most development potential, because that person in downturn is able to change directions without necessarily having to, change what the workforce looks like. So I think you can have continuity if you get away from, just looking at everything through the tight lens of what job needs to be done, and more from the lens of how do we get the right people to do whatever job is going to need to get done. And most of the time that can't be described, as we all know.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of gray areas in this. And how do you find out, the culture fit between the candidate and the organization? That is something which will require just going out and catching the fish just because there are plenty of them, and there will be plenty of them going on, coming after the crisis now. And I feel sorry for the graduate class of this year, but yeah, there's going to be a lot.
Yeah, right. They were born on 9/11, and then this is their senior year. So they got some bad luck for sure.
Yeah, and the unemployment rate in the last 5 years has just increased, and I think it's unfortunately really going to increase even now. And when you talk about SAP and Oracle and all these platforms, they are legacy systems, but they are so complex to use, right? Every small step that you kind of take, it just takes you forever to train yourself and to understand these systems. So,
Yeah.
it's like they're just stuck, somewhere, just not coming out of it. So why don't they kind of, aren't you supposed to look at the end user and keep them in mind and make a platform? What's your opinion?
Absolutely. So, as hard as it is when you're an applicant, and as stupid as it is when you're on a phone and you click this beautiful job description with employer branding, and then it hits you with that login screen where it's like, enter your credentials. You're like, what? So, as stupid as that is, imagine trying to export hundreds of thousands of those applications from that system to anything else. That's why the status quo hasn't changed. That's becoming more entrenched when you take cloud computing into it. So Oracle will, start having all that data, but now it's in the cloud, but they also own the cloud. So, between them and Google offering their business products, Amazon obviously supporting everyone. I think certainly that's the only wild card, but it doesn't really change a lot. So should they focus on their end user? Yes. Ultimately, they'll focus on revenue. Oracle, as much as we want to make fun of their products, like Taleo, which for some reason is still supported and hasn't been updated since the last time we talked about recruiting in a recession, they make their money off of out licensing and intellectual property. So API calls, code, that sort of thing you never think about. They don't have very many people sitting there trying to design a better way to apply. They have a lot of patent attorneys ready to sue anyone who doesn't write them the right check. And that's decent business, apparently.
Wow, that is quite insightful. You just never really know what they're thinking when they're making these platforms. And then I think the newer kind of startups and companies, they're thinking better on this, and they're kind of implementing better technologies or better automation tools than these guys are, and they're really kind of coming ahead of the curve, which is kind of a boon for some people. They do use technology, but there are some who are kind of repelled, and they just think it's just too much of work, too much of training. So that's that. But when it comes to newer generations, right? We were talking about millennials and Gen Zs, and you've written about that as well. And you do say that for many millennials, any job is a good job, and that's only going to be truer as we come out of the crisis, right? So, what is the future of work going to look like with millennials in the picture? And what do you think about gig economy?
So that's interesting. What we're going to see, I can confidently tell you, the gig economy has always been a flaming mattress, right? It has been a money pit. So the reason why it was artificially inflated and why we're talking about the gig economy is that there were a whole lot of companies and a whole lot of money that went into trying to make that a reality. Well, the economics of the gig economy state that you have to have supply before demand, and supply is predicated on going out and finding a whole bunch of people. And the model that they were able to bring to that in acquiring people through this partnership, freelance, gig, whatever you want to call it model, made them look like they were changing the paradigm of work. And as we all know and knew, Nobody wants to be a freelancer gigging as much as they would like to tell us that. Everyone wants a full-time job with benefits. So I think especially what we'll see now is that people are even more going to push back against, this lack of having an employer contract and really start valuing stability. And I think what you're going to see is companies are start to be forced to treat their workers a lot better. People will get used to being able to work from home when they can and not have to commute an hour each way to go to a job that could be done from home. So I think, that's going to be a change that has to happen. I think, certainly in the United States, people are going to start realizing, oh my goodness, I shouldn't go to work when I'm sick. And that previously, unless you were dying, you show up or you don't get paid. I think that's the future of work actually looks pretty good. And I think that we're being forced to really rethink what matters. The gig economy, WeWork being the poster child, and it looks like their valuation today became $0. Ultimately, the gig economy didn't work, and the old economy, which is people have value and they're our greatest asset, did. And as that continues to be proved, put your money where your mouth is, or else you're going to just be having the same problem coming out the other side, but it's going to be Gen Zs instead of millennials. And, you'll still be paying too much to reacquire the same workers you lost.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. I think, once you come out of the crisis, you're going to realize that there's just so much fish out there. How do you, separate the good from the bad, and how do you make a choice with so many people out there? How will you, market yourself as a brand? Will you go to the social media? Will you go to these job sites? How do you think organizations should do it? Should they rethink their strategy now?
I think, referrals have always been the most effective source of external hire, both from a percentage perspective. So like somebody who's referred as opposed to apply, they're 400 times more likely to be interviewed, right? So they also tend to stay at a job about 5 times longer than just a blind applicant. So what I think that companies need to start doing, and I say that not as a sweeping generality, but if I were kind of, giving blanket advice, it's that we had talked about this idea of brand ambassadors, but if we look at a market where everyone's out there and everyone's kind of looking over their shoulders right now, that can be a good thing. It's incumbent on your employees to let you know who they know who's good, because all of us know a bunch of good people whose jobs are suddenly threatened. And so if you're able to say, here's what you should be looking for when you're referring, who do you know, and really relying on that as opposed to, here is a job, Google, go get them, then you can hire when you meet the right person, and you can make sure that you're able to capitalize on the market as opposed to being reactive to, the next crisis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense, because I think, everyone's going to just, tell you things that you would like, they'll try to please you, because there's going to be so much gap in recruitment, and there would be so many candidates who would be desperate to get a dream job. So they're just going to be, on there, very, very polished, and they want to kind of really grab on the market. So it would be very difficult. Recruiters are going to have a hard time. So referrals make a lot of sense, definitely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Recruiters are going to have a hard time, but not as hard of a time as candidates. So, there's the thing. I would encourage any recruiters to remember how easy it is to be one of those resumes.
Yeah, that's good advice. And that was my follow-up question. What do you advise for candidates? How should they approach? How should they think about times after the pandemic?
So I'll tell anyone looking for a job, never, if you're reaching out to your network, never make it about a job. if it's like some guy who you kind of know from LinkedIn, you're like, hey, I noticed that your company is whatever. People think that's being smart. Like, I don't have to go apply for a job. You're never going to get one doing that, right? So I would say really look at not only who can immediately help you, but who you've built good relationships with. Because I think to my earlier point, referrals really do drive a lot of hiring. And if you're having to go out and look for posted jobs, it better be as you have identified somebody in your network who you're close enough with to trust their recommendation that, yeah, it's a place to work. Here's the thing. If you're applying for a job that's posted, it's probably already been filled. That's always been true, but now that's going to be even more the case. But you can get to a place where you're having a conversation with the company as opposed to applying for a job, and jobs will be created for you. It always happens. The key is to not be reliant on any, social media platform or how to really just, I think, authentically being the best at what it is that you're an expert in, having a track record of success, and really just, having a conversation opens the door where companies can't say no. And ultimately, the best way to get in is by not being like an applicant. It's by being really good at what you do.
Absolutely. I think ultimately it'd be your skills and how genuine you are. Having a conversation, as you said, would be what would matter. But on the other hand, if basically you see if the candidate is a millennial or if it's a Gen Z, it's from Gen Z, right? Would they kind of look at corporations and then question them? Hey, what is it that you did during the pandemic? Did you do something good? Did you do a social cause? Did you support something social? Are they going to be picky?
Yeah, no, I think beggars can't be choosers on the one hand. So if on the lower end of that, the Gen Zs, yeah, they're going to enter a job market where they're going to be happy to have jobs that we would never consider doing, as reasonable it means, because that's what they know. I think on the other hand, this is older Gen Y. We know that that's all just PR anyway, intrinsically, right? These companies, we now have understood, don't really care about us. They really care about their shareholders. So ultimately, I think there's a level of cynicism that undercuts all of the commitment to the things that both of those generations believe in.
Right, absolutely. And I'm really, really kind of very happy with what we've spoken about. So I just want to kind of end this with, what is your secret to creating exceptionally good content for marketing?
I don't create it for marketing. Honestly, if I have any advice for content, it's sometimes no content's better than a bunch. I think in these trying times, we're in this together is a good reminder of that. Got like 15 of those in my inbox today. If you want to create content, remember that you need to care about it if you want anyone else to. So if you have nothing to say or don't have a passion about anything, then don't force it. But if you do, just, trust in your own voice, and, people will find you. Don't go selling yourself.
Right. So it's just not about bombarding the internet with, post after post after post, but it's really about value.
It's just about providing something that is worth taking the time to read. And there is not a whole lot of that. So if the goal of any marketing is differentiation, then you don't win by saying the same stuff everyone else has. And volume gets you nowhere other than unsubscribed.
Wise words. Right. So I think definitely, I think our viewers are going to benefit from that. And I've had a wonderful conversation, Matt, and thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. I really appreciate you sharing your views. We're going to have William.
Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you for putting up with my crazy beard and sunglasses quarantine look. I didn't realize this was a video call until I was dialing in. So this was an improvised costume. Thank you for that.
No, absolutely. I mean, as genuine as possible. That's all we want. And
Well, I don't want to look like a lost member of ZZ Top, but hopefully it didn't undermine it. And I appreciate all the great questions, and I look forward to speaking with you soon.
definitely, I'll keep in touch with you. And, I just say stay safe and, stay well.
Likewise.
All right.
And see you on the other side. Fingers crossed.
Absolutely.